Hello, and welcome to the Biological Resources Information Program for construction on State Highway in Riverside County in Corona and Eastville from zero point 0.5 miles south of Ontario Avenue undercrossing to Route 6015 separation project. This training has 4 broad objectives. Hopefully, by the end of this presentation, you'll be familiar with all 4 of these points. First, we're going to cover the definition and implications of take. Then we'll move on to what your responsibilities are if you encounter a regulated species. We'll have a brief introduction to the protected species associated with this project, and then we'll go over some general mitigation measures that need to be followed in order to prevent any incidents of take. We'd like to emphasize that this training is meant to supplement, not replace the training information handouts that you should have received before watching this video. If you have not received a training pamphlet or booklet, please request one from your supervisor or on-site alluvian biologist. Let's start by discussing take. Take is a broadly defined term. Under the Federal Endangered Species Act, take means to harass, harm, pursue, hunt, shoot, wound, kill, trap, capture, or collect, or to attempt to engage in any such conduct. Penalties for take will vary from species to species. However, any individual found to be committing unsanctioned take may be dealt hefty fines and in some cases up to a year in jail time. These penalties are assessed for each instance of unsanctioned take. There are additional regulations and penalties that also pertain to the take of a protected species, including the Migratory Bird Treaty Act and the California Fish and Game Code sections 3503, 3503.5, and 3513. Again, penalties for violating these regulations includes fines and/or jail time. So what should you do if you encounter a regulated species on the project? The very first thing you should do is ensure that you do not touch or approach the animal. You should then immediately suspend work within the area the animal was found, especially if this work would result in take. Your next step is to notify your supervisor or the on-site biologist. If a biologist is not on site, please contact General Lockhart at the number listed on this slide and in your training materials. Unless otherwise noted in your training materials, a 100-foot no-work buffer will need to be established around the species of concern until it either moves off the project site of its own volition or until permission is received from the regulatory agencies to reduce or eliminate the no-work buffer. The next few slides will give you a brief overview of the listed species that occur on this project site. Many of the habitats and structures, particularly bridges associated with Caltrans right-of-ways, have been found to be inhabited by bats. A total of 18 species of bats have been found to use bridges in California in one way or another. Roosts are places that provide security and protection where bats can rest, sleep, hibernate, mate, socialize, or feed. In general, roosts are categorized into 2 distinct types, focused around the time of day when the roost is used, day roosts and night roosts. However, a particular roost may serve multiple functions. Roosts can take many forms and may be found in rock crevices, gaps in concrete or steel structures, trees, bridge weep holes, culverts, and many others. Bats prefer roosts that are in close proximity to open foraging grounds. A variety of bird species have been found nesting in or immediately adjacent to Caltrans right-of-ways. Nest sites are often placed in crevices, cavities, seams, or weep holes within bridges. Other nests are constructed in open vertical cement surfaces on bridges. The species that utilize man-made structures as nest sites tend to be more tolerant of urban conditions, but can nonetheless be sufficiently disturbed during construction or maintenance activities to cause nest abandonment or inattentiveness, resulting in the death or loss of eggs or juveniles. Incubation and brood rearing require approximately 4 to 5 weeks for smaller birds, but can take up to 12 weeks for larger birds. Now we'll go over some additional key species protection measures for this project. These slides won't comprise an exhaustive list of necessary protective measures, but they should provide you with a good idea of what's expected. Please refer to your training booklet for a comprehensive list of species protection measures. There are several general protective measures that need to be followed on this project. I'll go over these quickly, but you should review these measures in your training materials. First of all wildlife should be allowed to pass through the project footprint unharmed. This includes any animals that don't carry state or federal protections. All work conducted on bridges will take place during the day to the best extent feasible. If this is not feasible, effects will be minimized by directing lighting and noise away from night roosting areas as much as possible. Lastly, if there are suspected asbestos-containing material during the course of repairs or demolition that were not included in the preliminary report, those materials are to be assumed positive for asbestos unless additional sampling, analysis, and/or assessment indicates otherwise. We'll finish up here with some important takeaways from this presentation. Perhaps the most important takeaway is remembering what your responsibilities are if you see a regulated species within the project site. Don't touch or approach regulated wildlife and immediately report encounters to your supervisor or the on-site biologist. Keep your training materials somewhere you can readily access them. If an animal wanders onto the construction site and you're unsure whether it's cause for concern, your booklets contain the necessary contact information and procedures to follow in order to protect yourself and your company. It's important to remember that you and your company are wholly responsible for the following measures in this training video and its associated training materials, as well as the permits and specifications for this project. So please revisit this video and your training materials as needed. This concludes the Biological Resources Information Training video. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions about what's been covered in this presentation or your training materials, please direct them to your on-site alluvian biologist.